Here we go. Hello, I am Deb Coviello, the Drop-In CEO. And as always, I want to thank you for dropping in on another show where week after week I speak to the most amazing leaders who share their insights with you and hopefully inspire you. And I do this work, this purposeful work, because I sincerely care about partnering with C-suite leaders of today to help them navigate their challenges with confidence. And today I am thrilled to have back on the show Jeffrey Shaw, who has become one of the most preeminent. I'm going to start that again. And today I am so excited to have Jeffrey Shaw back on the show, who was one of the most preeminent. Okay. I am so excited to have back on the show Jeffrey Shaw, who is a prominent portrait photographer in the United States. He has portraits who've appeared on the Oprah Winfrey Show and many other famous places. Today, he speaks about how to sell to the rich at associations and conferences, and so many things to his credit. He is the author of The Self-Employed Life and Lingo, and coming out shortly, Sell to the Rich. And he is a podcaster just like me. And I have also enjoyed working with Jeffrey. Thank you for dropping it on the show.
Oh, Deb, it's so great to be here with you. Thank you.
So Jeffrey has a very special place in my heart. First of all, he was one of my early podcast guests, provided amazing value. I have also had the pleasure of listening, deeply listening to his insights, his guests on the self-employed life, even before that, the creative warrior, and also experiencing his self-employed business institute. I care about what he stands for, standing for people like me. And I know he's going to share some amazing insights with you today. So, Jeffrey, thank you for dropping in. And I would love for you to share a bit about yourself and your journey.
Oh, thank you. Well, I also want to acknowledge that you, especially you having been a guest on my show recently, how you've really changed my way of thinking. As someone who has always been self-employed, I've never actually had a traditional job or I've never received a paycheck from anybody. As we entrepreneurs do, I thought of myself as being self-employed or a business owner or maybe a founder, but I never really thought of myself as the CEO of my company. And that's been really powerful for me to learn that from you because I think it's a mindset shift when you think about yourself as a business owner, CEO. So I think that's really important work. And my journey is just that. I mean, I have been self-employed my whole life from selling eggs door to door at the age of 14. By 20, I became a professional photographer, having gotten out of photography school. Um, 3 years of really struggling in business, trying to build a portrait photography business in my hometown, which was this little country town. Just I didn't align with the community. I grew up, and this is one of the core lessons I think of many of our lives is that yes, it's where I grew up. Yes, it's where my entire foundation of the world came from. But when I returned to it with a big dream, my dream and how I saw my work was completely misaligned with where I grew up. And that was the struggle for the first 3 years. Like I didn't get them, referring to the people that could hire me, and they didn't get me. So after 3 years, I made fundamentally, I think, one of the biggest decisions we can make in business, which is, do I adapt to the market or do I fundamentally believe there's a market out there for me? And I chose the latter, right? I chose the latter and said, no, I don't know who they are, but there has to be an audience of people out there that value what I do as a portrait photographer, wanted to create beautiful artistic imagery that was worthy of an investment. And I decided those were people with discretionary income, which is a great awareness. The problem is I grew up in a small country town, knew nothing about wealthy people. So, but I learned it. And that to me is one of, I think, the most important lessons we can learn is a willingness to be curious and to really step into with an empathetic viewpoint those that we want to serve without judgment, without assumption. So I learned the world of the affluent. I learned by going to high-end brands, but not so much studying the brand or the branding, but studying the behavior of the customers. Like why, what was the psychology that drove them to choose that brand? And that became everything that drove my photography business for 40 years, which then led to how can I help others unpack this information? Because especially in the luxury business, I see the luxury industry very driven by data, trends, market research, which is really valuable. But the problem is nothing is ever more important than deeply understanding the people you serve. And market trends and research by nature is in hindsight. And by then, in today's world, it's too late. Like we have to understand what's going on in the moment. Right now, we have a lot of businesses that are, some are thriving, some are struggling. I'm seeing people posting in groups that I belong to and entrepreneurial groups saying, "Hey, is anybody else's business slow right now?" Like, I'm like, well, look what's going on in the world. Like, we need to just consider what's happening in the moment. There's confusion, there's uncertainty. It doesn't matter what side of the fence you're on, there's uncertainty and concern. It's like, of course, it's going to affect business. It doesn't have to bring your business to a halt, but how can we figure out what people are going through in order to meet them where they are and show them with sincere commitment how we believe we can serve them. So that to me has been the root of my every business, is just really getting to the heart of what are people going through and how is what I have to offer, from photography to coaching to trainings on serving the rich, how can I help them with my skill set and in that moment?
So, what you say is so validating. And also, I now have a sales coach that talks about it's about building the relationship and it's nothing about me and my value. Yes, I do have to consider, but have I walked a day in their shoes? Do I
Mhm.
really understand why are they hesitating not to bring me in when I know they need me now? It's that uncertainty, it's that risk, it's that courage, it's that deep understanding. And if nothing else, let's just hang with them. Show
Yeah.
them that we care, provide them value, information, what have you, because when things become a little less uncertain, they'll remember you for
Yeah.
caring about them, their behaviors, and what their needs are.
Yeah. I think one of the pivotal lessons of my book, Sell to the Rich, I would say this book has a purpose and a mission. The purpose is more obvious. The purpose is to help those currently serving the luxury buyer do better. And I, with as intimate as my exposure was, as I like to say, I don't just know this market. I was in their closets. Like as their photographer, I was in their closets, hearing their vulnerabilities, hearing about family dynamics, hearing about their lives. So I have such an intimate interaction for 40 years with this clientele. And because I didn't come from that world, I was insanely curious. So the purpose of the book is to help people serving the luxury buyer, even at levels they can't imagine. The mission of the book is imagine a world where everyday businesses, non-luxury businesses, what if they got the insider secrets to what makes the luxury brands stand out? How could they elevate their business? How could they do business at a whole other level? As what I like to say is where business isn't just a transaction, but it's a life transforming moment. And that's one of the things you fundamentally learn having served the luxury market for as long as I did, is that everything is at an elevated level. I often say serving the luxury market is like real life on steroids, because when money isn't an issue, everything else is. So suddenly everything's magnified, the relationships. So I like to take everything, what I refer to as the ordinary world, like relationships, right? We know in business we should build relationships. I'm like, okay, but let's up the game. More than build relationships, let's build bonds, because people don't break bonds. People break relationships, but they don't break a bond. Okay. So, how do we take the idea that we know in business that we should build good relationships, but now how do we up our game and say, you know what, I'm going to build such a strong bond with my clients that they can't imagine breaking up with me? Customer service, I look at it and say, a lot of businesses cater to serving the client, but what will have some of the greatest impact on the people that you serve is caring about the people they care about. So, for example, in my photography business, because I would get to know my clients so well, inadvertently, I'd get to know their family members, not just their children, but even parents. I'll give you an example. I recently found out through someone else, a former photography client of mine who I haven't seen in a couple of years, her mother's dog died. And I had met her mother many times and I'd met the dog. So when I've heard that through the chain of people, I sent my client a text and said, "Oh my gosh, please give your mother my condolences. I heard that her dog died, and I know how heartbreaking that is." Nothing means more to people than you don't just serve them, but when you care about the people they care about. And this is what I mean about if you unpack the best of luxury businesses, everything is, you take the standard and you up the game, you elevate it. And that's true of packaging. It's true of the beauty of the environment. It's true of service. It's true of relationship. And like I said, so the purpose of the book is to give those strategies. The mission of the book is to provide those strategies to people who aren't serving the luxury buyer, or so they think, but create a world where the standard of doing business is so much greater than it's ever been. When we as consumers do business and we walk away transformed.
So I'm going to ask you a question, and this is just you and me with our listeners getting a chance to act. I have been investing in relationships, not transactions. It's a long, long, long game. Is Dory in the room? It's a long game.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but I want to understand the essence of going from relationships to bonds. Okay, you gave me a personal example, the mother's dog. But when
Yeah.
it comes to I drop into businesses, manufacturing businesses, production environments, I'll deal with the VPs of operations, the CEO. When it comes to creating a bond, not just a relationship, what might that look like?
Yeah. What can you find out about them that isn't directly related to your business? Okay, because
Mm.
a lot of times when we're building relationships, we're building a relationship around the business relationship we could have. But what creates the bond is when you know things about them outside of the normal business transaction. So, for example, one action we took, or I'll say system, and you know me well enough, you've studied with me to know that I'm huge on systems, because one of the things you learn about luxury is consistent. Okay. It takes a long time to earn the trust of a high-end customer, and it takes a fraction of a second to lose it. So you have to be consistent. So systems create consistency, and consistency creates success. So I love to create a system. And for example, one of the things we would do, working with the clientele we did, they would need to frequently postpone appointments. Usually not the photo shoots, because a lot of effort went into that, but it was maybe some of the other appointments to come in and see the proofs, or to stop by to choose their frame. So there were a lot of things that had less of a direct priority to them. They were very prone to needing to reschedule because of I understood their lives, very, very busy lives. I also worked with a clientele that I was very careful to identify not just as affluent families, but family centric affluent families. So, what that means is that, because there are plenty of affluent families that don't put their family first. I worked with people that a family of four might have a staff of 8 or 10 in the home, but it was so that they freed the parents up to be with the kids. So those are parents that went to the soccer games and the ballet recitals. So their schedules were far more likely to need to be postponed because something's going on with one of their kids. Their kids are not brushed off. And so we had a system in our business that when one of my team members took a call or an email from a client who needed to postpone, they just casually would ask, "Oh, if the client didn't offer," which usually they did, they'd say, "Well, my daughter made it to the next level in the soccer tournament." They would usually offer, but if not, my team member would ask, just casually, "What's the reason for the postponement?" That would be put into the client's digital file, so that when I saw the client the next time, I would say, by the way, how did Susie do in the national soccer championship? Now, the client knew I wasn't even the one that talked to them. So they're left, these are the actions that create a bond beyond relationship. We're not talking about my business relationship with them. I'm demonstrating to them that I know what's going on in their lives. And yes, it was systematized, but to the client, it feels like, oh my gosh, they talk about us when we're not in front of them. And these are the things that create a bond. I also knew early on that the kids I photographed were my clients, because and I naturally love children and they are naturally drawn to me, thank goodness. But I also knew that if the children loved me and being with me, they would never let their parents hire another photographer. And on a rare occasion, one of my clients would try. They'd end up calling me back and sheepishly telling me they tried another photographer and their kids had a fit. So that's a bond, right? When you make people feel complete, as I like to say, like if you think of it in a personal relationship, no one in a personal relationship is ever going to say, "My gosh, you make me feel so completely seen, heard, understood, and loved. Therefore, we must break up." That's never going to happen. So make your business clients feel that way.
And you made me feel that way before we jumped on here. You asked about how my husband was because I postponed this meeting, I think a couple times with you, and were kind enough to keep it. And it showed me you cared. And I appreciate that because, again, it's about human to human connection here,
Yeah.
not just doing the podcast interview.
Yeah.
So I
And
appreciate that.
when I see things that remind me of my coaching clients, like one of my coaching clients, she always wears a scarf and she always looks so beautiful, the scarf. And I was in Florence, Italy, and walked past a scarf shop and took a picture of the inside of the shop and sent it to her. Like, can't help but think of you when I see beautiful scarves. So it has nothing, you create bonds by going beyond the business relationship to what can you find out about the client? What do you know about them? And I think honestly, I think most really heart-centered, empathetic business owners probably think of their clients a lot, but don't take action on letting their client know. So if you see things that remind you of your client, that made you think of, I'm always sending articles to event planners that hire me to speak. I'm always sending articles to people because I came across something relative to their industry, which might be an industry I'm learning more about. And I sent it to them. It's like, I saw this on LinkedIn. This is really cool about your industry. So it's that type of thoughtfulness that builds bonds.
And persistence and believe that it will, because one could say, oh, that is so much work to continually nurture those relationships. But I have to say, even in early stages, because I've now got a system to do that, again, it's show you care about people and they will remember you. So
Yeah.
it just takes a lot of persistence and belief that that process is what we need to do as business owners.
Yeah. Although I honestly don't think it's all that taxing. Honestly, I think there's an opportunity for a mindset shift there. Like during COVID, I kind of made a rule to myself that if anybody popped into my head, I would send them a quick text to see how they're doing.
Mm,
Mainly friends, but business associates, because I just felt like the world was so detached. And I can't tell you how often drop a text to somebody and they say, I cannot believe you're texting me. My mom just passed, which was a case with one you know, coaching client hadn't spoken to in a couple of years. So you know, it can be easy if someone pops into your head, a client, just acknowledge it. Let's let them know, because so often, I don't know, it is whether you believe in collective consciousness, whether you believe in signs, or you just believe it's just sheer luck. Who cares? But it's so amazing how often that timing can be so divine that you happen to just drop a
mm.
note to somebody. It's like a new version. If you're dropping CEO, like just dropping in to their lives at random moments, it's remarkable how often it's exactly when somebody needed it.
That's inspiring. And I'm taking note. And we're going to move on here because I
Good.
want to shine a light on your book, Sell to the Rich. And you started talking about, but I want you to go deep into this. So, what is it about luxury customers that really want beyond that customer service? You talked about relationships versus bonds. What are some other insights? Because whether you're a CEO of a company or an entrepreneur and founder of your own company, I want Jeffrey's insights to resonate with you because this may differentiate you from the
Yeah.
rest.
Yeah, 100%. I think one of the key things, and again, in my keynote, Sell to the Rich, the very first slide that comes up is a beautiful image. And then it just says, when money isn't the issue, everything else is. So I put it right on the table. Now, money is an issue for every person, but at different levels, right? So I'm
Mhm.
not just being glib and saying, but the fact of the matter is, what if in business we take money off the table? Because it's so often used as an excuse as to why we're not getting business, why we're not getting the ideal clients. Like, let's just remove that. Let's just take money off the table so that you can challenge yourself with all the other solutions. And I think one of the most challenging things in business, regardless of your business, is being chosen. Right? I mean, there's hardly anybody that's in any field by themselves anymore, right? There's a million leadership coaches. There's a million of everything, it's you have to really be doing something extremely rare to not have someone else in your field. So how do you get chosen? And I think one of the ways that we do this is, again, if you get into the head of the luxury buyer, because money isn't the issue, one of the big challenges I faced as a photographer serving that clientele was realizing that it wasn't about choosing me over any other photographer. Because quite honestly, I left all the other photographers in the dust. I mean, there just was no comparison because And it had nothing to do with, yes, obviously the quality of my work was really good and the imagery was beautiful, but so was many of theirs. But they were at such a different price point. They didn't uphold a brand that spoke to the clientele. So while they're trying to get $500, our average sale was $10,000. So I left them in the dust. Like there was no comparison there. But the comparison to if you take money off the table, to be the best choice for someone, you have to be the best choice in their lives. So imagine serving a clientele where money isn't an issue. They're not choosing which photographer. They're choosing, should we do a family portrait or should we go to Aruba for the weekend? Should we do a family portrait session or, gosh, I really like that jewelry I saw recently? It's not apples to apples. So if you really want to, any business, if they really want to challenge themselves, don't just strive to be the best choice in your field. Be the best choice in people's lives. Make it feel like the investment they can or need to make in your business is the best, most life transforming decision of all decisions they can make at that time. So now you are hopefully in your marketing realizing, oh my gosh, this is a big, I want that to intimidate people. If you're being told, as I'm suggesting, that you need to not just be the best choice in your field, but you need to be the best choice of all choices someone can make. I want that actually to intimidate people to the point where they're like, okay, then let me speak more clearly about what I do. Let me up my game and how committed I am to the service I can provide to you. So what I want that to do is really get people to show up with more commitment and conviction as to how they can really help. And as you know, having been in the world of sales for so long, it is amazing the difference in the energy that carries because one person can be just mildly salesy and be completely repulsive. Someone else can show up rather aggressively in your life. Like I can be quite aggressive as a coach sometimes because I believe so wholeheartedly that you need to hire me because I can help you. And if I can't, I mean, it's going to drive me crazy if I'm not given the opportunity to help you. If that is done with what I refer to as clean energy, like really pure and clean and well intended, they receive that in a very positive way. So if we up the game from just being the best choice in our field to being the best choice in people's lives, I believe that we will sell ourselves a little bolder, a little cleaner, and with more integrity to just say, hey, this is who I am and this is what I do and this is how I can help you. And I stand by that.
So what you talk about is I kind of internalize this because I am a student of your insights and selling to the rich, but again, selling to my ideal client
Mhm.
is it goes to like my pricing model, like take that off the table because if they really need you and if they really want you, the money's not the issue because they're putting their lives, their integrity, their business is
Yeah.
on the line. And it's almost like more of a mindset for me than them. I
Yeah.
know they have to be in the right mindset to be ready to make a decision. And again, I can't dictate their timeline. But if I just know deeply in my soul, I know they need me.
Mhm.
And this, I care about them. And I know things about them more than just the relationship. Given time, I become the obvious choice. And whatever I charge, and again, that's the problem with entrepreneurs.
Mhm.
What should I charge? Not, don't worry about that. Don't even put the cost there. Just say, this is how I think we can work together to help you to achieve whatever that is. It
Right.
is a mindset shift, and it is hard for business leaders to be
Yeah.
able to change that.
It is. And I'll give you a very practical tip. Again, something you learn working with the luxury market is don't be cute with your prices. Right? If it's $5,000, call it $5,000, not 4,999, because you're not kidding anybody. Right? They're rounding it up anyway. And actually, what you're doing is well, you're doing two things that are happening. One is that you're drawing attention to the price because it literally takes more brain cells to visually read 499 or 4,999. It takes more to say it. Right? Than just 5,000 or 5 grand, right?
Mhm.
It's so you have to realize the simplicity. Oh, so if you don't like, I often tell some of my coaching clients to get them out of that habit. I'm like, you can't complain about people nickel and diming if you're nickel and diming,
Mhm.
right? So if you're bringing attention to the cost by these weird fractional numbers, you can't be surprised that people are more focused on the cost than the message. So just de-emphasize the cost and focus on the message, and just de-emphasize the cost by just calling it what it is, just making it even. Um, we were one of the funny practices we had in my business that I always got a kick out of, but it really worked is that, and I understood, especially as the years went on, I had a reputation that preceded me for how expensive I was, which is when your success works against you, right? I mean, so people love to talk and even brag about how much money they spend. So the word gets out there, and it did have a negative effect on my business to the point where I had to kind of counteract that a bit because I worked on a minimum, but the minimum wasn't exceptionally high. I just knew where most of my clients were going to end up. But your reputation, when people want to showcase that they've worked with somebody who has such a reputation, they tend to exaggerate or put everything out there without context. So it got to the point where people would contact us with some hesitation. They wanted to work with me. They believed in the quality of my work and the beauty of the imagery. And I was the photographer to hire, but they were a little intimidated no matter how much money they had. So when they would call and inquire, our typical response at that stage of discussing rates, usually I was communicating with them, and I would often say to them, "Well, how many homes do you have?" And they'd be asking me, "Well, what is this going to cost me? What should I expect to budget?" And I'd say, "Well, how many homes do you have?" Not at all the response they expected, and they would say three. And I'd say, well, then I would expect probably around 15,000. I find most of my clients invest about $5,000 per home because you want, portraits in your main home, but then it's wonderful to share photos from the Hamptons home at your house in Vermont, right? So that was so cleverly done because it just, first of all, just gave them a range. And they would so often say, "Oh, it's not as bad as I thought." I'm like, "Well, what did you think?" "Well, I heard so and so spent." I'm like, "Well, did she tell you she had 5 homes?" Right? I mean, and numerous family members. So it just kind of gave them a vague place of comfort. But then it kind of made it their fault. I mean, it's not my fault you have 3 homes. If you had 2 homes, it might only be 10,000, right? It's kind of like making it their fault. Like, you can't have 6 kids and then complain about running out of money to educate the 6 kids. Like, well, you chose to have 6 kids. Do you really think you're going to educate the first three and not the others? Like, I mean, you know.
That's
So it
funny.
had this really interesting effect, but it just gave them comfort of a range. And I think no matter what your services are, coaching, consulting, I think especially in consulting, it's like you can just give people the comfort of knowing the range. I had an interesting experience recently. I'm hosting a group of 10 of my coaching clients in Paris in May for 4 days. I'm doing an event,
You're amazing,
and
Jeffrey.
um, I spent a lot of time in Paris. I'm like, why not? And so 10 clients wanted to come over, and um, in one of those evenings, I want to have a really nice dinner for us at a special location. And it was really interesting as I did my research. And this is, again, I think something for everybody in business to understand. People do their own research, right? That we're driven by, in fact, studies show that people make a 70% decision to hire you or buy from you before they contact you. So people get themselves 70% to the way of saying yes before you even know about them. And what I found contacting all these high-end restaurants is that the ones that didn't at least give me a range, I moved on from. I could call them, but you know what? They speak French. My French is kind of limited. There's the time difference. So I'm doing this research at 11 o'clock at night, which means it's 4 o'clock in the morning there. All these just make it difficult. It's like, what? The restaurant I ended up going with in the restaurants that I considered were ones that at least let me know it was going to be, 2 to 250 euros per person. Great. I don't need an exact number. Just give me a comfort zone to know that I'm not going to be blown out of the way when the invoice comes and it's 500 euros per person. Okay. So, I think consulting could do the same thing. It's like
Yeah.
just give people a comfort range because it may not, I think a lot of people worry it's going to scare them. But the other side of it is that if you have a stellar reputation, they could be thinking it's more.
Yeah. And Jeff, you've really validated my approach because I've asked for consultancy services when I've been in corporate, and it is pretty much just a one pager, and right on the bottom you see the price and immediately it jumps out at you. I now, when I serve and provide proposals to potential clients, my first page is their story.
Yeah.
This is what I heard about your situation. Actually, this is what I think the bigger opportunity is. Let them know that I've heard them. And then the second might be the solution, what I think we need to do together to try to move through from A to B. And only on the last page might I say, here's the approach I think we might have, but let's customize it based on your needs. And I do put a range on the bottom. And you know what? Never, ever, ever do we ever talk about the price. It's more about evolving what the journey might actually look like.
100%. Yeah. It's funny. I commented recently on a social media post, a LinkedIn post by a very well-known leader in the world of business, very public figure, who is asking a question about branding, or having a conversation about branding. And people are commenting on it plenty. And branding is this, branding is that, branding does this. And I spoke up, I commented because I literally felt like they were all talking about the surface level of branding. And I gave my definition of branding is, so actually branding is the world you create that your people want to be a part of. Like, again,
Mm.
this is one of those things you learn in luxury. Branding is a world, whether it's Chanel, Dior, Louis Vuitton, like Tiffany's, Cartier, they've created a world that you step into, you identify your story. I'm a huge fan of Dior. Why? Because Christian Dior is my story. Like, I so relate to that man's story, his what we know of him, and the way he his values, how he only ran, and here's what's astonishing, he only ran the House of Dior for 10 years, from because he passed away at 52, which, again, my story, my father died at 52. So it's a very relatable story, and the brand is his story, the story he wanted to tell. And I always say that it's remarkable when you think about the 60, 70 years since Dior's death, that the House of Dior still has such solid branding. Why? Because his story, the story of Dior, the story he created for the people he served, became a world that people wanted to step into. And that's why I'm a big fan of the brand, because it's a world I want to step into. I wear a Dior necklace, because it's a diamond, which is my own company logo, which is crazy, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's what branding is. And again, you can just see how people respond to the question, what is branding? And people say, well, branding is this, branding is your logo, branding is your image, branding is your story. I'm like, no, 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 folks, you all have it wrong. Branding is the world you create that your ideal clients want to be a part of. It's also part of them and their story.
It's reciprocal because you talk about and selling to the rich to deeply understand your potential buyer's world,
Mhm.
and they and the bonds that keep us together. So you got to go into their world, but then there's an element of then what is it to experience my world,
Yeah.
given the challenge or opportunity, and how can we work together? And by stepping into the drop-in CEO world, calm, confidence, clarity amidst chaos, I will get to a better place having worked with this person that deeply understands me.
Yeah.
Wow. I got to get back to your book, Selling to the Rich, because I haven't yet had a chance to look at it, but
Mhm.
it's sell to the rich. Is it how to sell to the rich? Or is it all about anybody that happens to sell to the rich in a mindset perspective?
Mhm.
So what is it that you're helping
So
for people to read this? Yeah.
thank you for asking that. So, I chose a really blunt title on purpose because, first of all, if you really understand the rich, they don't, I mean, there's such a bluntness to the title. Um, it's the people that don't really understand the market worry about that's too crass. It's not delicate enough. I'm like, but you have to understand, I know this clientele. Like I said, I was in their closets. They don't care. They're very much a get to the point type of clientele. So I chose to opt for that. But at the top of the book, put what I think is the most important phrase, on the cover of the book, more important than the title, is that it's not just a business book, it's your call to greatness. So it is, like all my books, all my work has such a personal development component to it, that I think what you realize, that, again, working with an affluent clientele, working with the rich, where everything is elevated, it has less to do with the strategies and trickery that you might learn to sell to people. It has everything to do with who do I need to become to earn the trust and the relationship and the bond with the clientele? Who do I need to become? So it actually, I look at it as I said, it is a tactical, I refer to it as a handbook. It's the insider's handbook to selling luxury is the subtitle. I look at it as a handbook because I want this book to sit on people's desks. I want them to refer to it. Um, but it is not just for those currently serving the luxury market. The reason it is also for a broader, like, hey, do you want to sell better type of book, is because if you have this is an opportunity to look at life in its exaggerated form. And you may not be serving the luxury market or the luxury buyer. But if you can operate at a standard as if you were your non-luxury clients, it's just what you're learning is how to really relate to each other. And what I love that you said a moment ago is about it being reciprocal. And I say this is all the time. It's like, it's not if you it's not entirely your why and it's not entirely their story. It's where does your why and their story meet? Right. So it's this back and forth of getting to know yourself better, getting to know your clientele better, and where do you meet and how do you speak? Which again, my first book being called Lingo, this is kind of the marrying of my own work. It's like you have to get to know it's an opportunity to sell to the rich. The book is an opportunity for you to find your greatness. And in doing so, you're called upon to understand your clients at such an incredibly deep level. Where does that meet? And now you speak that lingo. And it's like you're speaking a joining language to the people that you're meant to serve. And that, again, go back to branding. That's what exceptional luxury branding does. Of course, it's Dior's story. And it's the story of the women that he served from day one, which of course has been expanded in many other markets. But if you understood the root of his story, it was post World War, and Paris had recently regained their freedom from the Nazis, and Dior called upon himself to his greatness and said, "I need to help bring Paris alive again. I need to make women feel beautiful again. I need people to have a reason to wake up in the morning." Right. So he's very driven by how can I play a part in reviving a city that had been occupied. That's his story. But he was truly speaking the story of people that wanted that and needed that as well. Where those stories meet is where their success lies.
So, if I could just add to them, that is such a touching story because if I share a bit about myself, I mean, I've had themes for my year. And the last couple were to go big and setting myself up. What are the things, the systems, the processes I needed to have in place in order to go big? But then I reflected to what means, like to what end? Well, what's the big, why go big? And I realized at the core it was to connect with humanity. The more that I can shine a light, lift others, and realize their greatness and help them to leave a lasting impact versus being in a place of tumultuous circumstances and struggling, that is my why, that is my purpose. And so if you really, really believe that, and I really do believe that, is connecting with humanity through conversation, shining a light on your work, um, I'm creating this story for others to step into and also for me to serve. So very inspiring. And I cannot wait for your book to come out and be able to provide such insight to people that need to read it.
Excellent. Well, thank you.
Yeah, and again, I got two of your other books on my shelf right behind me. You've been an amazing person to follow, to learn from, and also to continue to provide your insights to my audience. But if we could just give you the mic one last time, bring this to a close, and how can people connect with you? I'd love for you to share a bit with my audience.
Well, again, the book obviously is meant to serve, and you can find the book at selltotherichbook.com, which will take you straight to the Amazon link, which is currently available for pre-order and will be until launch date, which is April 25th. So it's currently available for pre-order, and again, you can go directly to Amazon, search by my name or the book Sell to the Rich, or just go to selltotherichbook.com, and it will take you directly to the Amazon link.
So, Jeff, you've been absolutely amazing. And again, to my audience, I would call Jeff a partner in my journey here. If you are ever in doubt, if you are seeking to reach your greatness, learn about branding, your mindset about how you can serve and creating a world for them to want to be a part of, and also understanding the world of your clients, I absolutely recommend reach out to Jeffrey Shaw, a great human, a great friend, and a pleasure to have dropped in on my show. So thank you, Jeff, and I wish you well and continued success.
Thank you for having me, and I'm sure we'll be in touch.